With the trade deadline fast approaching, Lions fans are absolutely getting antsy about what Brad Holmes will do to address the edge rushing position, and more names are starting to pop out as possible candidates. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. It doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. My friends, I'm going to tell you this right now. As simply as I can possibly put it. If there is one thing that I would say universally every single Lions fan agrees upon right now at this moment, other than the fact that we're probably the best team in football, is that Brad Holmes has got to make a move before the trade deadline to acquire somebody to, kind of fill in Aiden Hutchinson's absence as an edge rusher. I'm telling you this right now. This is something that I don't think anybody is going to disagree upon, and I think everybody is absolutely waiting with bated breath and anticipation to see what the hell he actually does. Because I'm telling you this right now, we all know that this Lions team is not only good enough to get to a Super Bowl, it's good enough to win one. But we also have to be honest with ourselves, and I think almost every single Lions fan has come to this realization, and I think most of the media analysts have come to this realization, is that if the Lions want to seriously not only get to and win a Super Bowl, they have to do something to address the glaring hole that they have at edge rusher. I understand that, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell may not want to call it a glaring problem because to do so would cause more of a issue as far as among the fan base and also show the rest of the NFL that they're desperate. And I don't think they're desperate at all. That's just the perception it would give. But we have to understand something here. The Lions absolutely have to do something about this problem. And I believe that Brad Holmes is the best GM in the NFL. I am a bit biased, I'll admit to that. But, you take a look at the man's work over the last, going on 4 years now. He has been an absolute savant when it comes to being able to make, decisions. Whether it's been in the draft, which is his obvious strongest point of record. Now we've seen quite a bit of it with the free agency acquisitions that he's brought in. But now we're also wanting to see it in terms of the trade market. So far, really, Brad Holmes has only pulled off, I would be honest in saying, 2 successful trades. The first obvious trade is obviously the one that got all the draft capital in Jared Goff. That one is without a doubt his best move. His first move and his best move. But I would also say the Carlton Davis trade has also worked out rather well for the Lions as well. But outside of that, Brad Holmes has not really had a whole lot of success when it comes to the trade market. But this is one move that not only Brad Holmes has to do, but he has to nail it. Now, that's where this whole conversation realistically starts. Is, okay, we know that the Lions have been having an edge problem now for pretty much the last 2 years. Because we addressed it with Aiden Hutchinson, and Hutchinson is an absolute just phenomenon. I believe that guy's going to go into the Hall of Fame one day. He's literally an all-pro in my mind right now. But Hutchinson cannot do it alone. So this move that Brad Holmes has to make right now not only has to be something to address the here problem of, okay, we have to get something so that way we can continue to have a good pass rush, not only for the regular season, but going into the postseason. But we also want to see about trying to get somebody that we can pair with Hutchinson for later on down the road. So that then brings us into a problem that, okay, we have to find somebody that can kind of cover both venues here as best as possible. When we have that conversation, obviously we have heard a crap ton of names that people have been throwing out as possible solutions for the Lions to go after. And some of them have already been pretty much listed off as not going to happen. Such names as Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, those guys are not happening. They've already been said as much, whether it was by the owner or just by hey, you know what? Lions already kind of, nibbled at that conversation and it was shut down. Other guys have also been taken off the list because they've already been traded, such as the trade that happened yesterday between the Patriots and the Chiefs. So it's like, okay here, even though there's still options out there, trying to find one that's going to fit both parameters is going to be a little bit tricky. And then there's the cost factor that goes into this. Trying to make it work as terms of, okay, how much we're going to have to give up, and also potentially if we have to give up more afterwards in terms of salary cap. So when we take a look at this problem, this is a problem that has multiple facets, but it's one that Brad Holmes has to address. But in my honest opinion, if we realistically want to take a look at this, of the options that are aplenty out there, the 4 options that I believe are the best ones that Brad Holmes could realistically choose from are these 4. And that is Trey Hendrickson, Darius Smith, Harold Landry, or Arden Key. Now, 2 of those guys are from the same team. That's the last 2. The other 2 are from the Browns and also from the Bengals. Now, here's the reason why I bring those guys up. Either 1, they are on teams that are absolutely at this point not doing very well, which is pretty much every single one of those teams. Or number 2, they have been presented as names in the past that actually have, I would say, some possibility, some merit. Or they have something where it's like, okay, we could work not only with them right now, but also into the future. And some of them have multiple categories where they kind of overlap one another. But my point is that I think those guys are the probable best options that the Lions not only should be considering, but I think they kind of are considering. Now, why exactly are we talking about this? Other than the simple fact that, everybody already knows that the Lions absolutely need to get an edge rusher, we just have to understand just how crucial having an edge rusher is to our defense. I mean, let's just put it in perspective here. Talking about Aiden Hutchinson. When Hutchinson was on our defense prior to him getting injured, he was an absolute nightmare for quarterbacks and for offensive coordinators because there was quite literally nobody who was able to stop him. He was a monster on the field. You would literally see guys having to hold him, double team him, do whatever they could to just try and slow him down. You couldn't stop him. All you could do was slow him down. And just to tell you about the monumental impact that Hutchinson has and had before he got injured, he is still, right now, tied 3rd in the NFL for most sacks, even though he has not played a game in 2 weeks. Think about that. Even 2 weeks removed from the game, he's still tied 3rd. And just to put this in perspective, at his 7.5 sacks in 5 games before he got injured, in theory, if he'd have maintained that pace, by game 15, he could have had well over 22 sacks. That's just how damn, prolific he was. And you could see how that prolific, ability of his made a difference with our defense. And you can see also what his absence has affected our defense in doing. Ever since he's been gone, our pass rush ability has literally gone down the freaking tubes. Oh, sure, over the last 2 games, we've garnered 5 sacks, but those are probably the most ugly, most, sporadic sacks you could possibly get. It's not the same kind of production when we had Hutch on the field. So that brings us to this whole situation of why we need to trade for one of the 4 guys I've mentioned. I mean, just to put this in proper perspective as to why, one of Trey Hendrickson, Darius Smith, Arden Key, Harold Landry is absolutely needed. You go back to the Vikings game we just played. I mean, dude, the Vikings were not exactly, I would say, the best, pass blocking team in the whole world. They weren't terrible, but they weren't the best either. But when you go back to that game, all of the edge rushers that we had, and pass rushers included, I'm talking about, defensive tackles and ends, it was absolutely horrendous, our ability to win our pass rushing sets. In that game against the Vikings, Pascal only won 3.2% of his pass rushes. Freaking Ukwu didn't win a single one. Levi Onwuzurike didn't win a single one. DJ Reader won 6.3 of his, and that's percentage points, and McNeil won 10 percentage points. I mean, if you think about it, our defensive interior linemen were doing a better job winning their pass rush sets than our edge rushers were. I mean, that right there is a massive problem. So it's like, okay, here. We know it's a problem. Everybody else knows it's a problem. And we know we need it for our defense to not only play to its absolute highest potential, but for us to continue to make noise as we move further into the season, later on into November, December, and then obviously into the postseason. So what exactly about the four guys I have talked about makes me want them and makes me think that they're the best options? Well, I'm going to put it to you this way. I'm going to put them in actual order of who I think is the best versus who I think is the worst option. Here's my options. Option number one, without a shadow of a doubt, is Trey Hendrickson. I know that there are some people that are going to say, David, do you not know that Trey Hendrickson has said that he wants a lucrative contract no matter who he's playing for? Yes, I understand that. I realize that. But let's put it in perspective here, folks. Trey Hendrickson has not only deserved a new lucrative contract, but let's understand what lucrative contract actually means here. Because if you go back to April, back when Trey Hendrickson stated that he wanted to be traded, he stated that, yes, he does want a lucrative contract. But he's not looking for a contract that's going to reset the edge market. What he's looking for is a contract that is respectable to what he's been putting up. And I mean, you take a look at the guy's numbers. Ever since 2020, the guy has 60 plus sacks. You take a look at his pass rush win rate this year, it's at a 21.2%. I mean, that's not, up there with Hutchinson's like, what was it, 35, 36 some percent? But 21.2%, that's fifth best in the NFL right now. I'll take that all damn day. Literally all damn day. So for me, it's like, okay here. Not only is he still playing at a very high level, you can trade for him because the Bengals have not shut that down. They've not stated that they're not going to trade him. And this rumor's been obviously circulating for a couple of weeks. So you can get him. And I know that some people will be like, well, what would it take to honestly get him? You want to know what it would honestly take? It would take our second round draft pick probably this year. And you know what? I would be fine with that. I would be absolutely fine with it for a couple of reasons. Here's the first reason. Number one, if it takes a second round draft pick to get a guy like Trey Hendrickson, I'm fine with it because Trey Hendrickson is young enough to where that second round draft pick loss is not that big of a deal. Trey Hendrickson right now is 29 years old. As a edge rusher, he's easily got another 3-4 years of good quality product left in him. So it's like, okay, a normal draft pick contract is 4 years anyway, unless it's a first round pick. So you know what? If Trey Hendrickson fills that second round draft pick with similar production, what the hell difference does it make? So that's number one. Number two, everyone's going to want to talk about the contract issue because, we still have to pay for Hutchinson, we still have to pay for this, that, and the other thing. Okay, let me ask you this question. Would you rather pay a contract to a proven commodity like Trey Hendrickson, or would you rather pay that contract to a second round draft pick that, okay, he might look good in college, but you have no idea what the hell he's going to do when he gets to the NFL? I would much rather bank my money on a proven commodity versus someone that, you know what, maybe they're going to turn out good, but we don't know yet. Even with Brad Holmes' great, drafting profile, it's still a 50-50 bet. So there's that. And then finally, let's just put it down to the very basic, simplest point here. if we're wanting to talk about the contract money being an issue here, having less draft picks is obviously going to make a huge difference. Because think about it. We're trying to make sure that we have all this money that we've paid for that we're going to have for the contracts for the rookies we've already drafted. Well, if you have less draft picks to where you have to deal with that later on into the future, that's not a problem you're going to have to deal with. Let's call it for what it is, folks. The Lions are one of the youngest and one of the most populated teams in terms of talent in the NFL. It's not like we're starving in that category. So again, we can be fine with losing a second-round draft pick if it means we can get one of the best edge rushers right now in the NFL. I'm totally fine with that swap. That's why Trey Hendrickson is my number one pick, and I think it's the same for most everybody. Now, who's my second option? My second option actually would be the Titans' Arden Key. Now, here's the reason why I go after Arden Key. Arden Key is very young. I think he's like in his mid to late 20s, but he's kind of like half of what Trey Hendrickson is. He's got still a decent pass rushing ability. I think he usually gets around 12 to 14% pass rush win rate. So it's not terrible, but I mean, for crying out loud, that's about pretty much what Davenport was getting when he was playing for us. So that's respectable. I can live with that. Now, what would it take to get Arden Key? It sure as hell wouldn't take a freaking second-round draft pick like it would for Trey Hendrickson. You could probably get away with like maybe a fourth or a fifth-round draft pick. And it would obviously cost less money in terms of salary cap burden because he's not getting paid anywhere near as much as Hendrickson. But also, he's not playing anywhere near as well as Hendrickson. That's the trade-off. But again, Arden Key is a guy that, hey, he's got speed, he's got length. The only thing he doesn't really have is weight. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think he's listed at 6'5" with 240 pounds. So, yeah, he's got the length. But he's a little light in terms of being able to physically overpower freaking tackles. So he's primarily a speed edge rusher, which there's nothing wrong with that. But again, that does kind of limit him a little bit. But it's still a good option. That's why he's my number 2 option, because he's young, he's cheap, he's still a good edge rusher. The only thing he's not really is, I would say heavy enough to where, okay, if he has to overpower somebody, he can do that. So then that brings me to my third option. My third option, believe it or not, is Darius Smith. Now, why do I still like Darius Smith? The reason why I like Darius Smith is obviously because he's a veteran option. He knows what the hell he's doing. The offset with him is that he has had some injury concerns in the past. So you're kind of playing that game once again. But you take a look at what he's been able to do this year. Even though he's 32, soon to be 33, which is probably one of the biggest detractors I have against him other than the injury, past history, he's still winning his pass rushing sets at an 18.6%. That's just outside of top 10 right now, folks. So it's like, okay, here, you could get him for a nice rental for the remainder of the year. But that brings the problem on the back end. Do you really want to invest a contract into a guy that's about to be 33 years old? I don't know if that's something the Lions want to do necessarily. And again, that's because you're looking at the contrast and the way in the payoff difference between, okay, you give up like a 4th or a 5th round draft pick, which you'd have 4 years for, and it wouldn't be substantially all that much, versus you're giving it up for a guy that's about to be 33 years old and has an injury history, but he could definitely help you out right now. That's where it comes into this conversation of, is it actually worth it? So again, I like Darius Smith because of what he could provide for us right now. But is the trade-off of literally giving up a 4th or a 5th round draft pick, worth it in comparison to the short rental we would most likely get out of him? Because if you think a 4th round pick is not that important, I remind you, Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th round draft pick. Just saying. So, that brings me to my last option, which I know for some people they're going to be like, you have Harold Landry as your 4th option? Yes, I do, and I'll tell you why. Everyone wants to talk about Harold Landry's sack numbers over the last couple of years because, yeah, he had 10.5 sacks last year, and then, in 2021, he had 12.5 sacks. So, okay, he's proven he can get sack numbers. But the more I looked into his numbers, the more I was disheartened at the fact of what he could provide. First and foremost, out of all the guys that are on this list, he is by far the smallest. He's shorter than freaking, Andre Key, and he's about the same weight as Andre Key. Or Arden Key, pardon me. So I was like, wait a minute here. You're shorter than him, but you're also about the same weight. That's a problem. Because it means, okay, you have to be a speed rusher as well, but you don't have the length to allow that speed to get any sort of leverage. Okay. So then I started taking a look at this guy's ability to win pass rushing sets. Even though he's put up sack numbers over the last couple of years, his pass rushing set wins are absolutely atrocious. Again, you take a look at his numbers over the last couple of years. Currently, this year, you want to know how much he's winning on his pass rushing sets? Abysmally, only on 3.3%. That's ranked 155, folks. In 2023, it was definitely better. It was at 10.3%, but still ranked only 95th. And then if you go back to 21, the year before he got injured with the 12.5 sacks, it was only 7.7%, tied 134th. So wait a minute here. He's getting all these sacks, but he can't really win a whole lot of his pass rushing sets. So that made me ask the question, is Landry actually getting the sacks he's getting on his own like Hutch? Because if we put Hutch out there, it doesn't matter where the hell we put him. He's going to get his. He's going to get his numbers. Or is it rather that he has to be in a scheme-dependent situation in order for him to get those sacks? Which means that for whatever team he goes to, they're going to have to accommodate him in a scheme sense to make it work. And last time I checked, I think the Titans are a 3-4 base defense. We're a 4-2-5 base defense. That's not going to work very well. But I will say this. Currently, he's 27. He's in his prime. He has 2 years left on his deal. So that's why I'm still putting him on this list. But out of all the guys that I'm talking about right now, he's the least attractive in my opinion because it's like, I don't like his pass rush win numbers. I don't like the fact he's the smallest out of the bunch. And I don't like the fact that, okay, here, it seems like he's more of a scheme-dependent edge rusher than anybody on this list. But anyway, folks, we obviously have to wait and see what Brad Holmes decides to do, whether it's one of these 4 guys or if it's somebody completely else that we don't even know about yet. But having said that, I've presented my evidence. I'm going to end the episode and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. Because the more we can do that, the greater the channel has a reach, the greater the channel can grow, and the more we're able to bring in new content viewership. And with that, whether you've been a long-time viewer or this is the first time you've been able to view me, I hope y'all enjoyed the content. Hope y'all got something new out of the content. And I hope everybody out there is doing a great job. I hope everybody's got something that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.